So let's start at the beginning like we usually do. How is everyone?
Awake and ready.
How feels everyone?
Awake and ready.
Now please rise and pray with me. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, the love of God, Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Krishna, Mahavatar Babaji, Lahiri Mahasya, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, Yogacharya Oliver, and saints and sages of all religions. We offer on the altar of our hearts our deepest devotion. Receive us. Lift us from darkness, delusion and uncertainty, into the clear light of thy presence. Thou hast made all things, universe upon universe. Thou hast created us from thy light, and into thy light and love we shall melt. We have gathered together to honor our sister who has left her earthly habitation to rest a while with thee in the ocean of spirit, free from pain and trouble in thy peace and joy. We who are left must keep steadfast in our faith until we rest a while in thee. And now we're going to do a reading that you're all probably familiar with from the 23rd Psalm. But there is some additions. There's an interpretation from Paramahansa Yogananda that's added to maybe make it a little bit more understandable to most of us. Friends whom we love in life are not lost when they are gone just beyond. So let us remember the 23rd Psalm and be comforted. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, for he is all fulfillment. Everything that we have will pass away. Every desire brings another desire. But when we have the Lord, he casteth away all other desires. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. True wisdom gives all satisfaction. He leadeth me beside the still waters and gives me life. Just watching the still waters does not give life. Life comes from God communion. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod of discipline and thy staff of goodwill, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in thy eternal establishment, in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil of ecstasy. My cup runneth over. My body is swimming in spirit. Irmgard, receive our goodwill through this broadcasting microphone of our concentration. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Thy Spirit will cause thee to regain omnipresence. May thy soul rest as a diamond in spirit. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you to sit down. You should have all sat down after we chanted Om. And now we're going to sing "O God Beautiful." Oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful. At thy feet, oh I do bow. At thy feet, oh I do bow. Oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful. In the forest thou art green. In the forest thou art green, in the mountain thou art high, in the mountain thou art high, in the river thou art restless, in the river thou art restless, in the ocean thou art great, in the ocean thou art grave. Oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful. At thy feet, oh I do bow. At thy feet, oh I do bow. Oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful. To the serviceful thou art service, to the serviceful thou art service, to the lover thou art love, to the lover thou art love, to the sorrowful thou art sympathy, to the sorrowful thou art sympathy, to the yogi thou art bliss, to the yogi thou art bliss. Oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful. At thy feet, oh I do bow. At thy feet, oh I do bow. Oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful. In the forest thou art green, in the forest thou art green, in the mountain thou art high, in the mountain thou art high, in the river thou art restless, in the river thou art restless, in the ocean thou art great, in the ocean thou art great. Oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful. At thy feet, oh I do bow. At thy feet, oh I do bow. Oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful. To the serviceful thou art service, to the serviceful thou art service, to the lover thou art love, to the lover thou art love, to the sorrowful thou art sympathy, to the sorrowful thou art sympathy, to the yogi thou art bliss, to the yogi thou art bliss. Oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful. At thy feet, oh I do bow. At thy feet, oh I do bow. Oh God beautiful, 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 oh. And then reading from 2 Corinthians chapter 4. We look not at things which are seen, but at things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. And then from the 5th chapter of 2 Corinthians. For we know not that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God, a house not made of hands, eternal in the heavens. Irmgard played her part well in this drama of life and is gloriously received in the Father. He is happy in her freedom, and we should be happy for her. We shall miss her vibrant spirit and joyousness in life, but we shall not sorrow. We are left on the desolate shore, but we rejoice that she is beyond the sphere of problems and worldly troubles. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. For as much as ye know that our labor is not in vain in the Lord. This is divided into two ceremonies. The first is called the Bouquet of Goodwill ceremony. I might call it a rose petal ceremony. And we should have white and red roses, but Carol wasn't able to find white roses up here in the Gaylord area at this time of year. So we're going to use some of the baby breath for the white part. And when we're done, the red roses are to symbolize our goodwill that we're broadcasting to Irmgard. And there are enough roses that at the end of the service, as many as you would like would come and take a red rose with you for a memento. Our dear friend Irmgard endeavored to express in her life the inner art of living in all ways. Let all of us know her say together. Heavenly Father, we offer unto our dear friend the bouquet of our goodwill on the journey to thy kingdom. We shall miss her, but we are happy because of her freedom from the travails of life. Goodwill. 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 Irmgard, may the soul be one with the Spirit. We offer unto thee our bouquet of goodwill. The white rose, or in this case the baby breath, represent life in God and the purity of the expression of thy soul. The red rose represents the bouquet of our goodwill. Please all concentrate on this red rose and think of that through this symbol we are offering unto her soul additional power to reach one goal where we all must meet. We must not look on death as a grim ceremony. It is a pension from life granted by the Father. The wave comes out of the sea and goes back to the sea. The wave of life comes out of the ocean of birth and sleeps again in death. Death is going back to the Spirit. So we should not grieve for Irmgard Kurtz, even though as friends we shall miss her. And now we'll sing the rose chant. Roses to the right, roses front and behind. Rose, rose, roses, roses to the left, roses to the right, roses front and behind. Rose, rose, roses, roses to the left, roses to the right, roses front and behind. Rose, rose, roses, roses left, roses to the right, roses front and behind. Rose, rose, roses, rose to the left, rose, no, As many of you know that have had Kriya, that's the traditional chant at the end of the Kriya Yoga ceremony. At least with Yogacharya, I guess I can't say for everywhere. But and so now we're going to begin the fire ceremony. Irmgard, receive these thoughts as I perform these rites for thee. The body repents of all its earthly follies and is cast into the flames. The body came from the dust of eternity, and unto the dust of eternity it returns. Its ashes release the spirit unto the kingdom of heaven. The little body kingdom dissolves into the one body of God. The little body spark becomes the cosmic flame. Thy small breath becomes the cosmic breath. Thy scanty will becomes the almighty will. Thy wisp of feeling becomes the cosmic power of feeling. Thy love becomes the love of God. May the wave of thy life rest in the great bosom of the oceanic bliss until he sends thee back to play once more upon the surface of the sea bosom of life. This body will not be given unto the fire that originated in the cosmic flame of eternity. For even though thy body is destructible, thy soul is indestructible. Thou wilt retire a while from the stage setting of earth life and go behind the scenes until thou art asked to play again somewhere, as the Almighty decrees according to the actions of thy life. One life is not enough to play out all our desires. So, Almighty Father, wherever thou mayest send this soul to be embodied again, may she play the drama not only to uplift human beings, but to please thee. Thou hast earned thy pension in life. After long playing on the bosom of desire, thou art resting in his bosom, where thou wilt remain until thou comest again as a wave to play on his bosom of humanity. Thy soul has become the magnanimous spirit. May the withered petals of this life revive into the lotus of immortality. And now I'm going to start the fire ceremony with the flame and these little bit of incense. Hopefully I'll be successful at this. Well, we've had enough fires here in our times here. We don't want to start another one. Will you all please stand up and watch this fire? There's not much of a fire there, but you can see some smoke. This flame before you represents the light of her earth life, which is gradually disappearing and dissolving and finding its greater existence in spirit. Irmgard, may thy soul flame commingle with the cosmic flame. May the light of thy life commingle with cosmic light. And now we're all going to, those of you that have been through Kriya, you know this chant. We're all going to chant Om Swa 3 times. And how you do it is as you chant Om, you raise your hands up, palms upturned, and then on the Swa, you bring the hands down quickly with the palms down. So we'll do that 3 times together. Om Swa. Om Swa. Om Swa. Please be seated. I didn't forget this time. Swa is a Sanskrit word that means that helps the soul to merge with spirit as peace, bliss, peace. Om means that the soul unites with spirit in cosmic vibration. May thy soul commingle with the cosmic flame. May the flame of thy life be expansed into the cosmic fire. In the name of the Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Krishna, Babaji, Lahiri Mahasya, Sri Yukteswar, Paramahansa Yogananda, Yogacharya Oliver, saints and sages of all religions. And that ends our 2 ceremonies, and now we're going to begin our eulogies. I wish Jessica was here. Wait a minute, I'll call you up. Oh, she did? Okay. Jessica probably knew Irmgard longer than anyone else here, maybe followed by Dee. So why don't you come up, and why don't you come up first?
I might not have a really great reputation, but I knew Irmgard longer. I didn't spread my As time goes on, my dear true yogi friends and mentors keep slipping into the eternal ones. I have to say that we are really all alone. That each of us is part of this great ocean of divine consciousness, and it is infinite, unconditional love. What the Yogacharya taught us is we are just as much a part of this now as we will ever be. It is our minds that create the duality. As the great yogis say, we just have to improve our knowing with urgency, humbleness, and great respect. And as the Yogacharya always said, it is a natural unfoldment. You cannot force it open. Irmgard is a great example of this. I met Irmgard just around Christmas of 1969. I was in the Chicago meditation group with Betty Howard, Steve Sander, and many others. We would meet the Milwaukee SRF meditation group with Irmgard, which Irmgard started and led for many years. Our groups would meet in Benton Harbor, Michigan, and we would caravan to the Detroit Institute of Arts to see Mr. Black. It was really fun. We had many adventures together, always feeling Master's presence. Steve Sander and I got married, quite young, by Mr. Black in 1970. We thought we would hold hands and just walk into heaven. It did not work out that way. You can laugh at that. Irmgard was at our wedding. As a matter of fact, she came to both my weddings, performed by the Yogacharya J. Oliver Black. The second was in 1976 to Terry Jans. When Steve and I moved up north, Irmy and Chris moved shortly after. We would drive together from Gaylord to the ranch, Song of the Morning, just around, about every night and Saturdays and Sundays to see our beloved Yogacharya J. Oliver Black. Irmy was there for me when our first child was born, Airlia Joy, on February 16, 1972, and Ash Wednesday. Irmy gave us pink hyacinths, and they just were beautiful. The fragrance was lovely, and it just really was uplifting in that. Steve had to call Irmy to find out what to do. Yeah, Steve had to call Irmy to find out what to do when I went into labor. She just lived down the road, and so Irmy said, "You better get her to the hospital now." A huge blizzard was happening, but thanks to Irmy, we made it. She also was there when Christopher Ram was born, and he was also born in a blizzard. She is still encouraging us today. She has been my friend. For half a century, she's been my friend. And Irmy and all of us have spent many hours meditating together at Master's feet in his love. She is Divine Mother, like Sadie and Nancy Grabowski, or Bhuva Eshwari Nirmala Shanta, and D. Casillas or Smoky Mukti, and so many more. Lucy, Jackie, Maureen, Karen, Anne Marie, etc. I couldn't name everybody, but you know, they left their bodies and we have to carry on. So Dee and Nancy and Irmy were his personal secretaries. Dee, Nancy, and Irmy were his personal secretaries, or Smokey or Mukti, and Shanta and Nancy and Irmy. It gets confusing because people evolve, you know, as they meditate and do their kriyas, and they blast the ego, and then they get some spiritual name. And Yogacharya always said he didn't need no spiritual name, but you know, for us other, you know, what do you call minions or no, peons? Anyway, so, and I was honored to have them all as my really good friends. Irmgard always encouraged us to get along. She always had a smile and a giggle, except when she didn't. One great memory I have of Irmy was when I ran into her and Barb Briner unexpectedly in Sedona, Arizona in 1991. We were all so surprised and happy. We proceeded to have lunch at the Chinese restaurant, and we had a wonderful talk, and it was a cosmic meeting. We talked, they had just, they had been on the board, and I don't know if they quit or what they did, but anyway, it was a very good meeting, cosmic. And Irmy was a great help to our Yogacharya and a shining light of goodness to us beginners. We really appreciate everything she did and does. And so I have a poem. I found from a Rishi Grewal book given to me by the Yogacharya. It popped out of the book at me, and it is in honor of Divine Mother and Irmgard and all of our spiritual mothers that have helped establish our spiritual home, our song of the morning. It's an old Hindu prayer with metrical translation from the Sanskrit writers by Mr. J. Moore and modifications by Rishi Grewal. To the Kundalini, the mother of the universe. What yogis now? What rishis of old? The greatness of that mother hath told, who from her own heart gave birth to the sky and to the earth. Thou hung the heavens in empty space, and holds the earth in its place. Thou made that and lighted up the sun, to stay and shine this earth upon. Thy power transcendent since their birth, asunder holds the heaven and earth, as chariot wheels are kept apart by axles made through workman's art. In Shakti, who with thee can vie, thou fills the earth, the air, the sky. Thy presence unperceived extends beyond the world's remotest ends. A million earths, if such there be, a million skies fall short of thee. A billion suns cannot outshine the effulgence of thy light divine. The worlds, which mortals boundless deem, to thee but as a handful seem. Mother, thou art without a peer, on earth or in yonder heavenly sphere. Thee, God, such matchless powers adorn, that thou without a foe was born. Thou art the Lord of lords, adored by men, revered by gods. The circling times which wear away, all else to thee cannot decay. Thou shinest on in youthful force, while countless yugas run their course. Unvexed by cares or fears or strife, in bliss serene flows on thy life. With faith we claim thine aid divine, as thou art mother and we are thine.
Thank you, Barbara. That was very nice. And I have a few people I'd like to call up, and first I'd like to bring up Bruce Campbell, if you would, to say a few words.
Thank you, Roy.
He was lost in the Divine Mother there. He was lost in Divine Mother there.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Bruce. For those of you that know me, I did a staff member decades ago.
Bruce, why don't you go back there so we get your picture?
Oh, sorry. Stand here? Okay. And I'm really, really honored to be here and to celebrate Irmgard. I really can't say that I was a very close friend of Irmgard's, but we spent many years here together when I was on staff in the 70s. And really, one of the things that my life has been most blessed by is the relationship I've had with three particularly lovely women who were really, for sure, expressions of the Divine Mother, and who really helped me to grow and to stay in my heart and blossom as a spiritual person. The first one, of course, was my mother, who some of you knew. And there was another lady, her name was Kay Bortkus. She lived in Toronto. She's a very wonderful person. And the third one was Irmgard, because when I first came on staff, a 20-year-old idiot, Irmgard really took me on, She wasn't afraid to really, to love you, first of all, and then to let you have it when you needed to. I remember one particular story I wanted to share. We were all, I think it was 25 of us, all young in our 20s, full of testosterone and craziness, and I got into a particular little tiff with one of my brothers on staff, and I remember this thing has changed my life completely because Irmgard heard about it, you know. She came to me after, she pulled me aside and she said, you know, she said, you're a good person. She said, but you can be vindictive at times. And you know, on the spot, I decided I was never going to be a vindictive person again. Just the way she said it, just the way, because you knew that she wasn't criticizing. You knew that she was saying to you, this is in your way. If you want to blossom spiritually, just get rid of, you know, do not be vindictive. Don't be a vindictive person. Don't even think in those terms. And on the spot, that day I remember, and that thing really burnt in me. And, you know, that's how a mother is. You know, a mother will knock you down if you need to be knocked down and then lift you up when you need to be lifted up. And she wasn't afraid to do that. One of the things I remember the most about Irmgard, and I know you can all relate to this, was the light that was in her eyes. Do you remember looking, you know, sometimes you couldn't look at her. Her eyes, and I'm telling you, many of you have lived as long as I have, but if you've lived as long as I have, those of you who haven't, look at the eyes and you'll see what's going on with anybody you want to know about. And when you looked into Irmgard's eyes, it was the divine. There was nothing in there but divinity. In fact, Yogacharya told us one time, he told me personally one time, that she had absolute devotion. And he didn't mean it to him, you know, although it was to him. But he meant it in a much bigger and broader sense. And that was something that, to me, I considered a great blessing because, especially in this day and age, you know, when there is an ascendance of the female. And I'm so grateful for it because I have had wonderful women in my life. Of course, my wife also, my daughter, and my granddaughters. And maybe I'll stick around for some granddaughters. That'd be kind of nice. But that one story about the vindictiveness thing I wanted to share with you. The other one's a little bit more on the lighter side of things. We were all staff members together, and it was the middle of winter. It was really cold and quiet here, and there were just staff. And it was a time when Phyllis, who was Yogacharya's daughter, for some of you that remember, she and Yogacharya went to Hawaii on vacation, and they sent back postcards. And this is a side of Irmgard I'd never seen before. So they sent back postcards. Of course, Yogacharya wrote a little note. Each staff member got a postcard, okay? But somehow or the other, Irmgard got them all. So she waited till dinner time to hand out the postcards to everybody. So everybody got a postcard, but my postcard, she didn't hand it to me. She handed it around the table for everybody to see. And it was a picture of a hula dancer, you know, really, really sexy girl in a skirt, holding two big coconuts, you know. Well, you can imagine. And she was almost about to fall on the floor. Because everybody's got the picture with, oh, okay. You know, nobody knew what to make of it because it's some Yogacharya, and it's this hula dancer with these two coconuts. I guess I had a reputation for being a bit of a flirt back then. But it was kind of like Yogacharya, you know, several thousand miles away going, you know? And Irmgard was like a little girl. She just cracked up. She was almost on the floor laughing, you know, but she kept my card and wouldn't, you know, everybody else got their card and oh, how sweet, you know. So, I mean, Irmgard was frivolity from a lot. You know, she was a very somber, quiet person, and she was quiet to a fault, as far as I'm concerned, because if there was one person that was spiritually ready to, you know, take up Yogacharya's mantle, to me it was her, you know, and she was having none of it. She didn't want anything to do with the out front, limelight, any position, you know. She just wanted to be there and serve and be devoted. And I'll go to my deathbed, you know, being very privileged to have known Irmgard. You know, thanks.
Well, and Bruce is, you might disagree with this, but Bruce is so humble that he didn't tell everybody he just had a new grandchild this morning.
Oh, yes.
What time?
2:35 a.m. Rowan James Campbell was born.
His first grandson, right?
First grandson. I have two granddaughters.
Yeah. Good for you.
This is my little girl, so
Wonderful.
I'm really happy.
And now, we're going to open this up to everybody, but we wanted to make sure a couple of people spoke first. But I'd like to call up Carol Armour.
I want you all to notice the beautiful picture of Irmgard in front of the boathouse. She's looking the rail, looking out towards the main house, and I'm sure she's just thrilled that the memorial contributions that people are making are going to renovate that building. I think it's just really, I'm sure she's watching this and is very thrilled, not just for the people that she knew so well, but the new ones that are following through, because you have no idea how much she loved Song of the Morning Ranch and everything that happened here, and how much she followed through with what was going on here, not just by talking with all of us, but also through her inner life. Really sweet stories. But I want to say a few words about her, because so far no one has said so. A few facts about her and her life. Irmgard was born in the United States to an American father, but she had a German mother, and after a while, her mother wanted to move back to Germany, and that's how Irmgard got to Germany. And she, at the age of 14, the World War II was just over, and one final bomber was still flying over, dropped a bomb on the apartment where Irmgard, her mother, her grandmother, and her older sister lived. It killed her sister and her grandmother, and Irmgard and her mother were buried in the rubble for hours. She was buried upside down, and she told us that experience of being buried under the rubble while she was down there, that's when she really decided that if she was going to survive, she was going to devote her life to finding God. At that age, in that circumstance. So that's why we had the intense and incredibly deep Irmgard that so many of us know. That's where it started. She came to the United States at 18 to be with her father. She got married. She had 2 children, Chris and Bernie, a son, and Chris was a daughter. She came up to Gaylord to serve Yogacharya on her staff. She brought her daughter, Chris. Chris was 14 at the time. At first, she worked in town for the bishop, the Catholic bishop here in Gaylord, until Yogacharya was willing to take her on staff. And then she and Chris moved out here, and eventually, because Yogacharya was already getting older, she needed to move up to the boathouse because he needed a more direct care person. She ended up being his personal caretaker, his cook. She kept the house clean, incredible cleaner. The house shone when she was there. She was just that meticulous. She was the treasurer of Golden Lotus. Yogacharya formed in 1970s the first functional board. He had another prior board. It consisted of himself, of Irmgard, and of our lawyer, Mr. Driggers, from downstate. So she was in the middle of everything. As a treasurer, those of us, especially on the board, appreciate the meticulousness of her keeping track of funds and accounting and so on. She was quite, that was just her nature. And one thing that was her nature as a businesswoman, but her spiritual nature was apparent not just to us, but I remember one of my experiences that meant so much to me was in 1980, Golden Lotus was taken to court. Back at that time, yoga was not as well known for what it is. We were thought to be a bit of a cult, and the local township really would like to get some tax money from our 800 acres. And so our nonprofit exemption was put on the line. Our entire staff, for those of you on staff and think of, well, you had a roof fall in, or if you want a little adventure, our whole staff was subpoenaed down to Lansing for this court case, right? And so there was witnesses the first day and the second day. The third day, Irmgard came on the whatever they call it, the witness stand, there you go. And so she starts talking, and the prosecutor is trying to kind of shake us up as not really being spiritual, just kind of be some bogus front so we get a tax exemption. So our lawyer asked her to explain something, and so she starts her story with being buried under the rubble. That this is when she first decided that she was going to go after God. The prosecutor went up to the judge and says, "We're going to settle." He had just lost the case right there. So that was the power of our Irmgard, in case any of you wonder why she's such a big person in this organization. Just incredible stories. I'm just going to tell two more because there are so many stories and so many other people that have memories of her. The other story I'd like to tell is that Irmgard was a private person, and as Bruce said, totally devoted to Yogacharya, so much so that being with him meant everything to her. The boathouse, if you know the way it was, it has like a folding curtain. So her bed was on the one side of just this little folding curtain. He was on the other side with his bed, and her whole life was that way, zero private life. This was it. And yet, when he went on a few vacations towards the end of his life with his daughter Phyllis, and she was left behind because he wanted to leave the retreat in the hands of someone he considered responsible, she would get morose. So Yogacharya assigned me to stay with her during these periods of time. That's how we started to get a very deep friendship. Well, this is just one story of when I was up there, and it was a cold winter day and a lot of snow and no guests because Yogacharya was gone and so on. People didn't come up. So after Sunday dinner, that was our time that we had to ourselves. So the staff was all down in the main house. And Irmgard and I up at the boathouse, Irmgard wanted to take a walk. So we go out in this cold weather, and we're walking down the main road, and we went on a side road. Well, my feet started to freeze. I couldn't feel my feet anymore. And so Irmgard said, well, let's take this way that's a shortcut. Turned out it wasn't a shortcut. It was... If those of you who know the property know that there's these high hills that kind of run on just outside the retreat. So she didn't want to tell me that she had taken me to this high because of how far we were. So we're going up and down these hills. And we finally get to a fence line that goes, you can either go straight out to Sturgeon Valley and have another long walk around before you walk back, or you can cut across the fence. Well, as it happened, the snow by the fence was pretty deep. We decided to take the shortcut. So we're trying to trudge through this stuff. We're going up and down a few hills. Finally, we get down to this bottom of the hill, and we both realized we couldn't go any further. We didn't say anything to each other, and we're just kind of there. So, well, okay, I guess this is it, and the whole thing. Well, we didn't say this to each other, but what was going on in my head was this. Well, if Yogacharya comes back and found that these two people that he had froze himself, he's going to kill us. The truth, neither one of us had any doubt that he could pursue us through the astral world. This was not even enter into it. So then I thought, I got to get Irmgard back. Irmgard, in the meantime, a few days later, told me that when she was there and she realized that she couldn't go on, in fact, she did have a slight heart attack because of that incident afterwards, but she said, that I got to get Carol back. I just got to get Carol back. So anyhow, we pick ourselves up and we go up the last little hill thing. We didn't realize that just down that next hill was our main road that was plowed, and that we'd be able, and it's almost like an allegory where you say, so don't quit when you're that close. You're that close to anything, to realization or to doing anything you're doing. We were that close. We went down. Oddly enough, walking on that road, something brought my circulation back. My body was kind of shaking for a few days after that. Irmgard did have her slight heart attack, but to finish this story off, about a week later, we go to pick up Yogacharya at the airport. We're driving back, having our usual pleasant conversation, hearing about his trip. We get just to the place before you get to the wheelhouse where we have a few nice statues. We call it God's Garden. Just then there was a little pile of snow, and somebody pointed out, made some comment. And Yogacharya said, we had not, needless to say, we weren't going to tell him about our adventure and Irmgard almost dying of a heart attack, the whole thing. And he looks at, so he said, who would be so stupid to go out and get themselves frozen to death in the snow? I was so happy that 2 seconds later I got left off at the main house. She had to deal with the rest of the story up at the boathouse. But being with Irmgard was a lot of fun. She had no fear. We'd get in that sort of thing. So then I'm going to fast forward then to later on after Yogacharya passed on, because Irmgard's participation in the retreat was right up to the minute. She not only was on the Golden Lotus board until well into the 1990s, but very shortly thereafter, she was on the Clear Light board. And she remained to the Clear Light board really to her death. This last year, her name came up for renewal. Every 3 years, Clear Light board members' names get renewed. Well, we asked her, no, she's not going to do it. She's too old, this and that. I says, well, okay, that's your decision. All right. A couple of days later, I get a phone call, and Irmgard says, she says, I was talking to Barb. She lived with an osteopath and worked in her office right up until her death. I told her, I says, Barb, I'm feeling this emptiness inside of me, And Barb says, well, you know what it is, don't you? So she says, I'm calling back and saying that I will accept the renewal if anybody wants me. So, needless to say, the entire Clear Light board recommended her. The entire Golden Lotus board voted her in. And even though she couldn't come here anymore at that point, which I'm sorry that our young ones didn't get a chance to know her better, she would call in, and she was here right to the end. Is that dying with your boots on? Is that what is that called? So my final story about her then has to do with her awareness of what was going on here. She was a very deep person, very deep in her life. And towards the end, when she couldn't come here, that didn't mean she didn't have a feeling of what's happening. And so this particular story has to do with dreams she had that would point to her the future of our Song of the Morning Ranch and what will bring it about. And this is 4 specific dreams over a period of time. The first one was a couple years after Yogacharya died. Bob Raymer was here, and in the dream, and I have these recorded in my diaries, she called and told me, she says, Carol, I had a dream. You, me, and Yogacharya were sitting on a bench overlooking it was Yogananda's outdoor meditation site that we know. Now, we were often together because we traveled together. He needed a companion to travel with the 2 of them, and that's why she would see the 3 of us. And we were looking down the hill where, those of you who know the Yogananda meditation site, beautiful view. It was filled with rose bushes that were pruned. Like when you go into in the spring and you see these rose bushes and they're all cut down. Well, right away when we were talking about her dream, we realized she was talking about all our members and of Golden Lotus. They'd come here, maybe they'd spend time on staff, they'd go out in the world. Life would prune them down a little. You'd cut off a little diseased branch, or you'd have an experience, you'd get pruned. So that was all our membership, pruned rose bushes. But why do you prune rose bushes? Because then they're going to bloom more beautifully. That was the first dream, okay? A few years later now, we're now on the Clear Light board. Irmgard had a dream. In the dream, we are having a Clear Light board meeting up at the lodge. And we were sitting in a circle, those of us who were on the board on the time, and by each one of us was a rose bush, but it was blooming. And Master was in the dream, and he was coming around with a bowl and kind of giving us sustenance. They really wanted this project, the community project. And so but what was so interesting about that, the blooming rose bush obviously is these members are getting together, and they're blooming. They're going to bloom, and they're going to produce this project into the future. Well, the next day we had our Clear Light board meeting. We never met in the lodge. It just so happened that we couldn't go in a usual meeting. We ended up meeting in the lodge, and whoever had set up the chair set it up in the circle. She had seen in the night before the exact scene. So that was the second rose bush dream, obvious, members blooming, okay. Next dream, up to about, I think this is about 2010, you would remember, Ian, because we were in Lansing at one of those meetings with the DNR, the DEQ, this and that. I stayed overnight with Irmgard because the meeting was very early in the morning. And she left for work before I got up. She left me a note, and she says, Carol, I had a dream. She wrote down the dream. In the dream, this house at the time downstairs, she had a meditation room. And in the meditation room was, your typical altar and so on. Well, in her dream, I was down in the meditation room, and she says there was a little cow on the altar. And then, but around the room was all these blooming roses. So I thought about that, and I says, well, it didn't make anything of it at the time, except that something about that cow reminded me of a cash cow. What does a little cow mean? Well, okay, fast forward it from 2010 to right now, this was all about our project there where we ended up losing the lake that hurt so many of us, and now we're involved with the restoration project. And guess what? We have more than $500,000 sitting there waiting for us to, we've been applying, Linda and I have been working on this with some wonderful help. I think that's what the Blooming Roses was there. This is the project is gonna fruition to the future and the glory of our retreat. So the final rose dream, she had 4 of them. This brings us up to a couple years ago. And that's actually, the red roses are symbolic of all of this. She, in the dream, she was in our retreat garden, okay? And she's trying to harvest potatoes. But to harvest the potatoes, she had this long stick, and she's trying to poke them out of the ground. Well, in the course of her dream, she realized that you can't get the potatoes out of the ground with the stick. It's just not good enough. So she looks around, and she sees kind of like a shed that's kind of dilapidated, and kind of reminded me a bit, we need a lot of work on our boathouse, and maybe the ceiling fell in at the main house. Things are a little falling apart a little bit, right? So she goes into the shed to see what implement she can find to get these potatoes to harvest, of all of these things that we've heard, filled with blooming roses. So what are those blooming roses? It's all of us, with whatever abilities we've gained, with whatever we can do that's going to take, that can bring the harvest of Golden Lotus to fruition. So that was the story I wanted to share with you about our dear Irmgard and her inner life.
Thank you, Carol.
Well, let's hope we don't go over too much here. We don't want to we still want to eat. I just wanted to, my daughter, some of you know my daughter, some of you don't. She had, I wanted to have her be here, but she couldn't. She's a CPA, and she's in the middle of tax season, and she's working all weekend. But I had her write this up. She told this story when we had a memorial in Lansing. And I thought it was important because so many of the young people just really didn't know or weren't close to Irmgard. And I wanted you to know that she did have an effect on some of our youth. And I'm going to start with, kind of build this up a little bit. When Jaylyn my daughter, was a student at Michigan State, and Mary Ann and I would drive up here if she was in the mood and felt like it, we would drive through Lansing and we'd pick her up and we'd bring her up to the ranch with us. And one time we came up here, it was in the winter, and I don't know if there was an actual program or what was going on, but there were a lot of us, the old members that were on staff and knew Mr. Black were on the board when he was alive. And it was wonderful. We got together and we got to tell all these old stories of our experiences with him and, that kind of thing. And it was wonderful for Jaylyn because she'd heard all of Mary Ann and I's story, and she was probably sick of him, but she got to hear all these other stories she'd never heard of before. And so we were driving back, taking her back to Lansing, and it was a blizzard. Can you imagine that up in Gaylord, you know? We're going down 75, and we're all blissed out, and she says, what an unbelievably great weekend, she says. And she says, but there's only one thing that bothers me. And Marianne and I said, well, what's that? And she said, when am I going to meet my Mr. Black? And it just killed me, you know. And so Marianne and I would spend time trying to introduce her to people that might have that position in her life. So we took her down to visit Roy Davis. She was initiated by Roy Davis, but he wasn't her cup of tea, you know. He just wasn't. She liked him, and she felt his spirituality, but he just wasn't the personality that she was looking for. So we took her to meet Irmgard. Irmgard was living in Lansing, and Jaylyn was living in Lansing. And she just loved Irmgard. So anytime we could go see Irmgard, she just would sit at her feet. She hardly ever said anything, she'd just be with her. So this is from Jaylyn about some experience. So she says, Irmgard is an inspiration to me. I didn't spend a great deal of time with her, but she has had a big impact on my life. When I lived in Lansing after graduation from college, the highlight of visits from my parents was that we would always stop by Irmgard's house. Before leaving after one of our visits, Irmgard gave me a book that I cherish, called The Three Candles of Little Veronica, the story of a child's soul in this world and the other. She wrote in a note in the book saying, to Jaylyn with love, this story was an inspiration of my youth. May it be a joy and blessing to you always. Irmgard. I remember being at the ranch for Yogacharya's birthday weekend one year. I was particularly excited because Irmgard was going to be there. The entire weekend I tried to be next to her as much as possible. During the dinner, social time, and meditation. We were both quiet, so we didn't say much. But just being around her was satisfying enough. I wonder if Richard and Carol remember this. We went for a walk in the woods with Carol, Richard, and my parents. Irmgard tripped on a tree root and fell to the ground. We all gasped and rushed to help her up. She stood up calmly and unruffled. She laughed and said in a sweet voice, I felt as though I fell into a soft pile of feathers. This excerpt from the book Irmgard gave me reminded me of that fond memory. A fortunate few carry with them through life the vision of the innocent years. The rest of us must work hard to retrieve the light that is so freely given to us at birth. But if in reverence for all life, in patient observation, in sorrow and compassion, the veil of darkness falls from our eyes, then it is we who are the lucky ones. For in full consciousness, we have reached back to the paradise before the fall. We have earned that which every child inherits unearned. Dee, would you like to come up?
I just need to get one thing.
And after Dee, while she's getting whatever she wants, I'd like to invite anybody that would like to come up. And because we're running a little bit late, we'd like to have you all talk for the whole rest of the afternoon, but we have to kind of respect the staff's time, and dinner's at 2 o'clock. So you're all welcome to come up, but maybe try to keep it short. Go ahead.
Couple minutes.
Well, I wasn't going to say this, and I didn't know why I brought this, but this is the book that Roy was just talking about with Jaylyn. Some of you may have read it. It was out of print for a long time. Well, you just reminded me of a little story, so I'll just tell this little thing. First of all, I met our beloved Irmgard down at the Detroit Art Institute at a Sunday service with the Yogacharya in the early days, like Barbie was talking about. And she came with the wonderful people from Chicago and from Milwaukee. And it was just wonderful meeting her. I felt like I just always have known her. So, and like Bruce said, her eyes, I call them sainted. Her beautiful sainted blue eyes. You're right. And she was always right there. What you saw was exactly what she was. She was an inspiration and a wonderful friend. I'll miss her terribly. I'll mostly miss her cards. She always wrote me decades back, wherever I lived or whatever I was doing, raising children, seeing grandchildren, whatever. She always wrote and inspired and sent me strength, and I'll miss her very much, her cards. Well, when she and Jessica and Chrissy Kurtz, her daughter, moved to Gaylord, they moved in an apartment downtown Gaylord, right on Main Street, kind of near the Sugar Bowl. And I remember going there to visit her when she moved here, and walked in and said hi. The girls were very young. I think Jessica was maybe 15, and it seemed like Chrissy was 13, actually, 13, 14, something like that. And walked in, and on the table in the living room, Irmgard had a leather-bound book, and it was all written in German, only German. And I just remember walking over to that little table and picking up the book and touching it. And she came over and I said, I know this book. And she said, you do? And I said, yes, I do. And I said, what is it called? Because I couldn't read German. And she said, The 3 Candles of Little Veronica. So anyway, I highly suggest you read this book if anyone can get it. Now, I don't know if we have much time, but what I wanted to do today, since I was asked to do something, was to read in Irmgard's words this beautiful tribute she wrote to Song of the Morning. There are copies of it here. And if any of you haven't read it, this really is her devotion, not only to our beloved Yogacharya, but to this sacred place. And so it isn't very long. Excuse me. I am called Song of the Morning Ranch. I have been, since the beginning of time, a still place in the wilderness, with a gentle river running through my lands. I have been known as a logging camp, a vacation place, but my true nature came to the fore that special day when a wise one came into my life. He called me Song of the Morning Ranch and told me that he and I would henceforth be together. He had eyes of a dreamer and a doer, and a mystic and a visionary. He said that many people would come to be with me, with all who would come and would find a haven of rest in my being. I would be known as a sanctuary to all who would come for relaxation and spiritual refreshment. He told me that from henceforth I would be known as a yoga retreat of excellence for hundreds of years. I did not know what those words meant at first, but I loved this gentle man. I loved his visions and his dreams and how he would transform them into reality. He, in turn, loved me. He walked over my rolling hills and paths so many times and never got tired of admiring my woods or the river. And I sensed that the people who started to come and be with him and me began to change. They came to learn, to listen. And I saw them sitting together meditating, praying, chanting, and learning to think of God, learning to love him. How I loved the song about God and him going through the fields together. Somehow I felt part of all of this, and I began to understand that I was the fields and the woods, and God walked together with his people, like good friends should and do. I felt a wondrous stirring in my soul and felt my lands become sanctified by the prayers and meditations of my saint and his companions. My friend, the mystic, the dreamer, loved all the seasons of the year and how they clothed me in different colors. He loved spring with its renewal of life. He loved the summer days and the activities it brought to us. He loved the autumn and the changing colors of my trees, and he never got tired of taking pictures of all my different forest paths. But the best of all, I think he loved the winter that covered me in a snowy blanket of whiteness. It reminded him of a finer and purer world. During the holidays, he loved to greet the new people who had heard of him and myself. I can still feel with deep reverence the beautiful Christmas carols the people sang during the holidays. The deer would stand outside the lodge in the evening and look into the windows, that's true, listening to the prayer chants they sang. My sweet Yogacharya grew older. Excuse me. His hair almost as white as my hillside snows. Still, he came daily to spend time and commune with me. We had some very special times together, my Yogacharya and I. Then came a day that his friends came and told how he had left his body. He hadn't told me. At first I missed him so. I pined for the long walks, the talks. I could not stop thinking of him. We had seemed to belong together always. Then, hearing his friends sing that faint melody, my God and I walked through the fields together, I realized he was still with me. Now he was in me, a part of me. Now we are together even more deeply than before, united as one. My Yogacharya and I. I only hope as many friends can come and share in our joy and feel his presence that permeates my hills, my trees, my every leaf and blade of grass. As he said many times, let's continue in Master's love for many hundreds of years to come. Have no fear, he is very much alive in me. We are Song of the Morning Ranch. Irmgard Kurtz, 1990. Well, I just would like to say Irmgard didn't like any fuss about her personally, like they spoke of. But, you know, if you have a moment in your next few days or month or whatever, she would probably appreciate it very much if you would keep her daughter, Chrissy Kurtz, Duncan, in her heart, in your heart, your thoughts, and definitely your prayers. Thank you.
Well, can you keep it short? Come on up. I hate to cut this off, and what I would like to suggest is that once Jeff's is done, we're going to have Ann Walkenhut is going to play a final song, and then we're going to go up to dinner, and we can continue this up at dinner. If anyone has stories that we can continue amongst ourselves. Jeff?
Very brief, huh? I had the good fortune, or good karma and blessings of the Masters to be on staff in the early 70s. Like, I know it's about 10 or 12 of you in the room that were at that time too. Can anybody hear me?
Louder, Jeff.
Okay, anyways, those were fortunate enough to be on staff in the early 70s when Yogacharya was there. We also, Irmgard was our mother. You know, where Yogacharya was the master, and sometimes he would discipline us very, very heavily. And of course, that's why we're here. And to serve like just today's staff serves just as hard, if not more, than we did. So, but Irmgard was always there to put her arm around you, and the deep blue eyes of hers just look into you and give you the guidance and love of a divine mother that still stays with you. And one more, when Yogacharya, he used to go down every Sunday to do the Art Institute's Sunday service, and hundreds of people would come. But in the later years, he had such building projects going on up here, he didn't have time to go because he was getting older. So he decided to send Irmgard, the first person he ever sent down to do a Sunday service. And she, you know, so we were still up here, and after the service, down at dinner, he said, yeah, she did a good job. He said, I checked in on her a few times. I'm going, how does he do that? You know? And I asked him one time in the boathouse, but that's another story. So fast forward 40 years. Irmgard's living in Lansing. I'm down in Bloomfield and doing our thing. And through karma, I has a physical karma. I ended up being in the hospital for 6 weeks. And through whatever infection, they couldn't operate because I had an infection. So I was on heavy medications, and I was slipping. Life was slipping away, and I knew I was very, very close to dying. I just didn't want to talk to anybody come. I didn't want to, and lo and behold, I got a letter from Irmgard. It was very. You could just feel the mother that she was when I was on staff. So, anyways, fortunately, I got cured and came out. But Carol told me later on, Carol Armour, she said Irmgard checked in on me as Yogacharya checked in on her, and so it said that she saw me with one foot on the other side, that I was almost dead. So she had the ability to do that also. Anyways, that's all.
Now we're going to sing this together? No. And you're going to sing with us.
Once a minute, please join me. First verse.
I see the stars.
all stand for this. It's a short prayer. Heavenly Father. Heavenly Father. Divine Mother. Divine Mother. O Spirit. O Spirit. Make my soul thy temple. Make my soul thy temple. But make my heart thy beloved home. But make my heart thy beloved home. Where thou wouldst dwell with me in ease. Where thou wouldst dwell with me in ease. And everlasting understanding. And everlasting understanding.